So this is our third session, and if you remember, we were discussing the structure of training evaluation. There are 5 basic points at which we can measure, assess, or reach judgments. The first point, if you notice here in this diagram, starts even beyond the training. This is very important. Just don't look back at what has happened. We must have a futuristic point of view. The first thing that would come in your mind would be, I think I am talking about TNA. Yes, I am talking about TNA too, but there is much more than TNA here. We are having an expectation. We should have an outcome in mind when we start the training. That is an ideal situation, that when the training is to be begin, there have to be some measures to be taken. The first measure that comes to my mind is, are the people who are nominated to such and such training, are they really fit for this training? Do they need some qualification? Do they need some eligibility? Do they have some knowledge base? Do they have some entry behavior? Should we send everybody in the organization to this training, or should selected people be sent to the training? If you decide it has to be the selected people, then what is the selection criteria? How do we assess that? So the evaluator should be ready with such assessment measures also. So I think you remember that when I say assessment, it is synonymous with evaluation. That is gauging the, measuring the real thing, the amount that we need. That is what assessment here means. Sometimes it will be synonymous. So we should also be looking at the futuristic point of view at number 1 of the stage here. And if we have the end in the mind, we are going to have a better training design. We are going to select the right people to send to a particular training. Then, as you notice, the second point here is the training is going on during the training. So during the training, again, there have to be measures taken. There have to be instruments created to gauge the learning that is happening. Otherwise, training is just being done in good faith. There's no point in doing a training without knowing whether the participants are gaining in knowledge, whether the participants are involved in the training, whether the exercises that you are giving them, or the questionnaires you are giving to them, or any games that you are doing with them, are they making any sense to them? Are they relevant to them? Is the learning being derived from them? So during the training also, we need specific instruments to measure the change in learning. So you might be noticing below, there are two things written here. Reactions, we check the reactions. We measure the success of a training during the training through reactions. That is what the participants are giving you as a feedback, or informally how it is going on. And it is very important for a trainer, or if you are the evaluator and a trainer, 2 in 1, then it is important for you to know how the training is going on, whether the trainer should slow down the pace or increase the pace. Is the training up to their level? Is it too easy for them, or is it too challenging for them? So this is how the trainer needs to change his delivery, the methods, and keep on reviewing them. So the reactions is one thing, and then the gauging of learning. How can we gauge learning during the training? During the training, the trainer can ask questions to them. There could be small quizzes or reinforcement exercises that could be given. It depends upon the kind of training. Even the role plays, games, exercises, they also tell the trainer how the learning is happening, whether the participants are able to do what the course objectives were. Then when the training has been exited, the point number 3, this is a very, very important point, because in the training you have a very different environment. You could say an ideal environment, or something that has been artificially created. It could be even a simulator. So when going to the workplace, the environment could be entirely different. And here you need to have some measures where the participant can transfer the learning that has happened during the training and going to the workplace. Now, you might be thinking, who will do that? It is definitely the prerogative of the trainer. How far the training has been successful and is matching the training objectives that were thought at stage number 1 here. Are they matching or not? This is the time to see that also. And before going to the workplace, it is maybe you can give them an action plan. That is just one example, or how they will use it. In a number of my trainings, what I do is I give them a learning log. Like learning logs are, formats where the participants can write what they learned today and what they would going to, how they are going to apply it in future. So the learning log could be for the whole day's learning also. It depends upon the participant, how he uses it. Some people prefer it for the whole day. Some people can make it even session wise. If there's a session on a particular topic, then they could write down what I learned it and will it be useful in my workplace or not. So that is one example. Action plan, what, how the learning has happened, how they will apply it in the workplace. So these kinds of things are here. And again, the reactions of the participants, how the training went, what was the reactions could be on many things, manifold, like on the faculty, on the facilities in the training materials, the design of the training, the pace of the training, the learning that has happened, and whether it was good enough for them or was it too much for them, or did they require any, should there had been a prerequisite, or was it too easy or too difficult for them. So this is a very, very important place, and this may even determine what happens in the 4th stage. And in the 4th stage, I don't eliminate the other 2. 1 and 2 are equally important, but here there's a change going on in the 3rd, at the point 3. Now at the point 4, at the workplace, you must be noticing here that there is a focus on results and there's a focus on behavior. When we say behavior in training, we mean it is a combination of 3 elements: the knowledge that a participant has, the attitude that he has, and the skills that might be being imparted during the training, or he already has those skills with him. So this is a combination of 3 things: knowledge, skill, and attitude. So at the workplace, the 2 things that are important to be seen or evaluated or measured or assessed, one is the behavior and the other is the result. And here the line manager, the senior management, the HR people, these people become prominent in the life of the person, or the trainee who has undergone the training. There they become more important. And here all the external validation measures can be taken. You can have instruments that would, you can have instruments that could help the trainee to assess his own knowledge and his skill. And then there is another point that has been shown, 5. That is, the person has exited the workplace. Now, you must be wondering, why, when one has exited the workplace, why should the behavior be important? You can look at it in two ways. What does he do when he leaves the workplace? If you talk about day-to-day activity, he goes home or he goes back to the society. Or it could be when he has left the work, when he has left the organization, then he is going back to the society. So what the organization taught the participant, or uh, was there some improvement or addition to his personality, or was it just insensitive person that has come out from the workplace who is not even useful to himself or the society? So that becomes a very prominent question here. If you notice here at points 1, 2, 3, it is the trainee himself who is very important. And of course at 4 also, more or less the trainee who on whom the validation measures are being taken. And the line manager is also equally concerned, because he says how long it will take and how costly it will be and whether it is worthwhile or not. And here again at 4 also, we are looking at the futuristic point of view. Should the organization be looking forward to more trainings? And another view here is also to look back at the training, whether the training was really successful or not. Did it give what they started with, what the training needs asked and training needs identified? Could the training provide that? So at point 4 number, if you look back, then the training needs become important, how the training needs analysis was done. And you can even look at futuristic, whether we should send more people to such a training or not, what we have gained by this. And here also the individual is quite prominent. And but if you go to the fifth point, and to a great extent even at the fourth point, it is the organizational competitiveness, effectiveness that takes prominence. You can even, we will be discussing the Kirkpatrick's model in the next session. Then I think you will be able to align much. It talks about these 4 levels only: reactions, learning, behavior, and results, which is the ultimate level. And ultimately, this is what the organization is aiming at, to get the result and increase in performance, less absenteeism, fewer complaints. These are the indicators. The audited statements of financial statements, the reports of the organization, they give you the clue. They tell you how they have traveled from say 10 years ago to now, or 5 years ago to now, how the trainings have been effective when the entire workforce or a large portion of the workforce has been trained. So we will be discussing these again and again in more details. And there are some factors that create difficulty in evaluation. It's not an easy thing. In the SAT cycle, if you remember, this was the ultimate last thing. But while discussing the SAT cycle, I said that evaluation is built into almost every stage. So evaluation is a bit difficult than all the other stages. I would say so because there are some factors that create difficulty. The first factor that comes to my mind is the time scale. I think we discussed that also. Evaluation cannot be done immediately after the training has taken place. It needs some time. Somebody raised a question that, Pam, if it needs to uh, like given some time, then but the organizations wouldn't be able to wait. There definitely will be a conflict, and I totally agree with that person. There will be a conflict between the need to allow time for effect to take place after the training, and it becomes apparent after some time, like when the person has come back to the workplace and he is now starting his own work, and he's applying the learning in the job, it will take some time. It depends how much time, that is not a question that I can answer, because that depends upon the training that the person has undergone. So for that, it depends upon what kind of training he has done. Some trainings might produce a good, very good results immediately. Some trainings might take him some time. And so evaluation would be taking some time, and there could be a conflict between the need to allow time for the effective training to become apparent and for evaluation to take place as soon as possible after training to minimize effects of contaminating factors on the results. Now you must be wondering, what are these contaminating factors? They are other factors other than time scale that create difficulty in evaluation. Let's have a look at them. The contamination happens to what learning has happened in applying that learning into the job when the business objectives have changed. It could be possible that the business objectives were earlier something and the organization decided to have a new set of business objectives. The participant who learned something, he cannot apply that. Changes in technology and systems. In the training institution, he learned on a different software or something, some other technology. But the systems provided in the organization are still the same, obsolete. Then leadership style of the managers. I remember one person mentioning to me in one of my trainings that, ma'am, I underwent this training, but when I went, I was well equipped with a lot of knowledge. And my manager didn't know anything about it. And he said, this person has just come back and now he's just showing off. I don't agree with what you are doing. You keep on doing how I like it, and that is the way it has to be done. So the leadership style of the managers is very important, and very, like, it could be a deterrent to the person or it could be supportive to the person. And it really pays if the leadership style is supportive, it is democratic, and it's not a dominating style. Then changes in the work method or culture. You were doing work some way and the method has changed. Conflict between implementation of training and non-training interventions. For example, you have been trained very well, a person has been trained very well and he's very enthusiastic to apply that learning in his job, but there are some things, some mechanical things or some problems that are stopping him to do that. There is a noise around him where he cannot really do this, or the machines are not working properly. So these are non-training interventions which are not inbuilt in the training, but because of them he's not able to apply. Then work group pressure. People who are not in agreement with that person, they might not encourage what he was doing, what he has learned and applying in his workplace. So there could be a decline in motivation. So these are the things, these are the contamination factors that can be there. Now, I said that the supervisor should be having a good leadership style and they should be effective. So the ways to make them more effective is, hello? Yeah, is somebody asking me something? Okay, I'm continuing. So we can solve this problem by providing training for supervisors, review selection criteria and procedures that are going on, and increase the number of meetings between supervisor and their managers, and review the content and priority area of supervisory jobs. Supervisors is just an example. It could be like any other training, and increase delegation to the supervisors. So people who have been trained and who have learned new ways, they should be given more delegation. Now, the next factor, you learned about time scale and you saw the contamination factors. The next thing is the management support. Actually, management support is very useful for you because they are the ones with whom you need to work closely, because they are the people who give you approval as an evaluator. They are the ones who will agree to your proposals. Unless they agree, unless they give you approval, you cannot proceed with evaluation of training. So you have to work closely with them and you have to depend on them. Why do we need to depend on them? Because resources, they are the people who will be giving you fund, who will be providing you facilities, who will be providing you people who can, with whom you can have interviews or on whom you can run your questionnaires. And they are the people who will judge the effectiveness of training, because they will help you in that. If you give them a criteria, they are the management people will be the ones who will give you information about how they judge the effectiveness of training. If the people have undergone a training, whether it was effective or not, they are the ones who will give you clues to that. Then the levels at which evaluation is needed to be done, that is what they will provide. And they will arrange for performance data required by you, like how do they measure that there's a rise in the performance, how was the performance prior to the training and after the training. These are the things that the management will give you. And reaction to findings of evaluation, there could be some of the things that you will uncover and people may not be liking that, and there could be a negative reaction about it. So these are the things that have to be taken care of, and unless you have the management support, it will be difficult. So management support could be, their attitude could be either negative to the training, because some people think that training is a waste of time. Some people think that training is just a holiday. People go in, have good food, stay, go into a good hotel, joke around and have fun and come back. Some people are neutral about it. Whether my people go to training or not, it doesn't make any difference. And some people are very enthusiastic and positive. So if the manager is very enthusiastic and positive, then you are lucky. But for other people, you will have to deal with them diplomatically and you have to work hard to show them what EOT can bring them. So friends, on the screen, you can see some graph. On the vertical axis, there is performance. And by performance, we mean expected outcome of training. That is, we started with some objectives and we wanted that the participants should be able to do this. For example, you were giving them an IT training and you wanted that the participants should be able to run macros in Excel. So after the training, are they able to do that and they are able to make a good program running the macros, and the problems of these generating queries, etc., is solved or not? So there must have been a problem in performance and the expected outcome of the training. Then on the horizontal axis, you see resources. So investment of appropriate resources. That is what we mean by saying resources. So when we are going as an evaluator, when we want to evaluate a training, these are the two factors that are crucial. These are the factors that make you judge whether a training was good or bad. Now, performance versus resources, that is what the earlier graph showed. And in performance, there are some parameters, two parameters to make it short, TNA and the standards. Unless you have a standard, you cannot measure it, the rise in performance. And resources parameters are costs, time, facilities, and faculty. I will discuss the resources parameter first. The costs. The costs are all those costs that are involved in training, the materials, the design, the training institution's cost, the time away from the um, organization, that is also a cost, the salaries, and the funding that you are doing into the training. These are all costs to the training. So by measuring costs of one training versus another training, you're able to see which training is better. If the training is less costly and giving you the same results, that training is definitely going to be better than the time. Now it could be that the time taken in the training is say 2 weeks, but the same result can be obtained by training in just 1 week. Or if it is a 5-day course, you are sending your participants for 5-day course, they go to say Goa to get trained, and then it takes them 5 days. The training also involved half-day tour of the city, and whereas they remain within the city where the headquarters are, and the time taken for the training is just 2 days. So within 2 days, though, you have been able to achieve what could have been done in 5 days. Besides the time away from the office, that also has to be calculated. Like people have been away, and that means they're not doing the work that was allotted to them during that time. The work is piling, and the output of the organization or the um, functioning of the organization definitely suffers if the people are away. Then the facilities. Facilities is the area where the resources are mostly, the major chunk of resources are used. Facilities are of the training institution, the faculty, the hiring of the faculty. It could be the inbuilt facility in the organization, or it could be some outside organization. For example, if you have a number of trainings and you have your own internal training institute, and it is always full, the hostel is full, the classrooms are always running round the year, there are students coming and going, then the facilities can be said to be really useful and less cost effective. But if you have to if you have a training institute inbuilt and it doesn't run for the whole year, only for some time, lesser number of participants, then it is not such a good idea to have the facilities inbuilt. Should it be the hotels outside, like many organizations do, they hire hotels and people stay in the hotels only and use the facilities. So these things have to be evaluated for resources and facilities. Then the faculty, everything is all right, but the main thing is to increase the performance. So how is the faculty delivering the training? The faculty costs are definitely very important, because this also takes into its stride the design of the training and how the training methodology is being applied. What kind of methodology do you have? Do you have like the games or the exercises? The training was good enough, interesting, not boring? So these are all the things that have to be taken care of by the faculty. And for faculty it is very very important, and it's like the higher you go, the cost of faculty will also increase, and so on. Like some trainings could be done just by one trainer. If you have in the whole institute there's only one trainer, there would be a lot of burden on that person. And should there be more than one trainer, and so on? These are the questions that you will have to deal with. Now we'll come to the other parameters, that is the performance parameters. There is TNA, the first standard. The first parameter is the TNA. If you have conducted a good TNA, then you definitely will be able to measure your results. You will be able to measure the job performance. You will be able to measure the training during the training, the learning that has happening during the training. And the three critical factors in TNA consultancy are environmental, motivational, and behavioral. Generally, evaluation is concerned with the behavioral aspect, and if you want to look at the contamination, then the study of environment, the motivation of the employee, that is also to be seen. And for training objectives, we depend upon the behavioral aspect of the TNA consultancies. Now, the other parameter of performance was the standards. Unless you know what the current standard of a person is, or our employee is, you cannot you cannot make an objective, like you cannot put a target that this is the enhancement in performance that we want. And the performance objective, what a person is doing, that should be really very clear, in unambiguous terms. And it is actually activity related work. For example, if it is a post of, say, a supervisor, he clears the claims, medical claims, then his activity related work here would be that he clears the claims, he approves the claims, or he examines the proposals. And performance criteria is another criteria, that is significance, features of a person's performance that determine their competence. Now, that we have one work that he clears the bills, but there will be small tasks involved in clearing that. It could be that he is able to do 2 or 3 tasks very well, but there is only one task or 2 tasks that require help, in which he requires help. So these then an analysis has to be done in the performance criteria. So unless we have the correct standards, performance objective is performance criteria, and the TNA has given us a list of behavioral objectives that are there, it is very difficult to measure the increase in performance. This graph, friends, will show you again the same graph is there, the performance on the vertical axis and resources on the horizontal axis. And suppose you have done the TNA also, and you have done the you have seen what the standard of performance is, and here you think that this level would be ideal for my organization if the performance is reached. It is not that the person would have a zero performance, because he, even if there's no training, he will show some level of performance. This is just a depiction. It could be anywhere. There could be a person who is very proactive. He's doing the internet search, he is doing courses on his own and increasing his efficiency or his own performance. So even if the organization is not giving him training proactively, he has a very high level of performance. So this is just a depiction. So even if we don't give a training to a person, he still has some performance level. Now in this diagram, friends, just what you're seeing are 2 triangles. Actually, this pink triangle is in front of the yellow triangle. You can't see the portion that is behind the pink triangle. There are 3 triangles, and the organization decided that this is our level of performance, desired standard of performance that we want to achieve through a particular training. A training would be called effective only if it is able to enhance the performance of the participants to A level. The desired standard of performance is achieved after the training. Then it is called an effective training. And ineffective training is the one in which the level is not reached. It could be here, it could be here, it could be here. But if it is not reaching the desired standard of performance, then it cannot be called an effective training. So this is the criteria behind the effective training. the thing that we started with. We started with the TNA, we had a performance objective, we have a desired standard of performance, and the training is able to do that, then we call it an effective training. Now, friends, in this diagram, you are able to see two triangles again, and both of them, these are representing two different trainings. The yellow triangle represents the one training, and the pink triangle represents another training. You can't see this portion of the pink triangle because it is behind the yellow triangle, and both of them are able to provide you the desired standard of performance. But the training represented by the pink triangle, it took a lot of resources. Maybe it took many days. There were more guest faculty invited. The training cost was too high. The material produced given was very high. It was in a 5-star hotel where the menus were classic and participants, though they have fun, but the same desired standard of performance was obtained by a training that was, say, less time consuming probably, or maybe it could be done in a training institute where the faculty just took some amount of money. It wasn't too cost effective, like it was quite cost effective. So such a training where you are spending less amount of resources and getting the desired standard of performance is called the efficient training. A training has to be effective to become efficient also. If it is ineffective, then there's no use of doing such a training. So we need to, as an evaluator, you need to concentrate on both the things. The training has to be effective, that is, it reaches the desired standard of performance. It should be efficient also, that is, the resource consumption in the training should be much less. So that is what is important for evaluation of training, to have both the efficiency as well as effectiveness of a training. For example, your training was very good, very less resources were used, it was very cost effective, a lot of DLM material was shared, people could read that before they came to training, but there were only 20 people who were trained. But there are still 1,000 people who require the training. So there's no point in having such a training which is called efficient, using less resources. Then again, there's no benefit to training 1,000 persons if it is not effective. You have trained the whole workforce. All the supervisors have been trained, but they're not able to produce, or they're not able to reach the performance level that you wanted the organization set for them. So such training again is not a useful thing for the organization. So as an evaluator, you need to have both the training to be effective as well as efficient. Now look at this graph. Again, the performance is on the vertical axis and resources are on the horizontal axis. This graph actually says that I showed you two earlier graphs. If you remember, I'll just go back to them. Here we assume that every participant would have some standard of performance. Actually, that doesn't happen. The standard of performance is not same for all the participants, and it is a likelihood that all the participants would not be reaching this standard, or it could be that some overreach it. So when we are talking about performance effectiveness of the training, then we expect that all the participants or majority of them have reached the standard of performance, and it is unrealistic to think that all of them would begin with the same standard. So let us come back to this graph, and here the person has some pre-course knowledge when he enters the training. These days people try to read even before they enter into the training, some proactive people read about it and try to know more about it, what the course is about and everything. They try to find out and they increase their learning curve. And suppose before entering the course, their performance is at this level, then the course, what does the training do? If it is an effective training, it accelerates their learning and their learning increases. And it could be like the person has reached this standard of performance and he's applying it and the performance is still increasing. But what this graph tries to show is there will be a slack. The graph stops becoming vertical, it starts becoming horizontal. And that is what the organizations should be still concerned about. You remember the first slide I show you, where in the job performance at level at point 4 and 5, the organizations should be concerned with evaluation at the for job behavior, results and job behavior. So here organizations need to delve into providing some continued improvement in performance after a time gap. If you really look at the resource axis, there is a lot of time gap and the resources used are could be in any form of course. They are much more and there is going to be a horizontal curve in the learning. The learning curve is going to become a little horizontal and the trainee initially learned when he was curious, he learned a lot. Then again, he performed and learned. Because on job, we learn a lot. His learning accelerated. And there is going to be a slump after some time. And they need to keep abreast of the latest developments that are happening in the professional field. It is very true for the doctors also. Doctors, engineers, they have to keep abreast of what is happening. And for the organizations to remain effective and to have to be result oriented, they need to invest here also. What further career progression, what further trainings are required, what other things can be done so that the participants are able to and they don't become obsolete. There are some principles of evaluation, friends, which are very easy. By now, you must be able to guess yourself that what would they be there. For example, first, the trainer or evaluator. Now, I'm saying trainer or evaluator because it is quite possible, especially in India, mostly people who are doing training, they're doing evaluation also. So the evaluator must be clear about the purpose of the evaluation, why the evaluation needs to be done. We will discuss the different purposes a little later. So he should be very clear about the purpose of the evaluation. By purpose here, naturally it would important what the organization wants, what the organization wants to be done. A good trainer or evaluator must be able to demonstrate objectivity. And how will he demonstrate objectivity? He should have measurable standards of assessment. Before the training, this was the standard, and after the training, this is the standard. Or at workplace, after applying the learning at the workplace, after say 6 months, 10 months, 2 years, this is the measure of assessment. So that should be measurable, standard, valid and reliable research instruments. The instruments that he's using, maybe questionnaire, maybe survey, maybe any other instrument, that should be reliable and valid. And detached analysis and interpretation of data. He should not be emotionally involved into it because the analysis might show some things which are not pleasant to people. So he has to be prepared for that. For evaluation to be reliable, the results should confirm irrespective of the method used to gather the data when repeated by the same trainer again. So the results should be confirmable even if you use different methods, and if you repeat the same thing, then the results should be consistent. Evaluation has to be accepted as a process rather than a final product of training. It has to be a continuous as a process. Like you cannot say ultimately I have done the evaluation, it is over. It has to be a continuous process. This we have been discussing since the day one. In the SAT cycle, you saw that evaluation is a part of each and every stage. Evaluation has to begin before the training activity and much after conclusion of visible training activity. So we have to keep in mind that it is not in the training institution that the evaluation has to be done. Actually, yes, it has to be done there also, but the main thing, the main effect of evaluation has to be at the job performance and the result level. It must be comprehensive enough to provide qualitative data, directive. It guides the trainer for training effectiveness and improve subsequent training. I think that is clear enough. So then evaluation design should be tailor-made to suit specific training levels and standards. It has to be custom made, I should say, for every organization, for a set of people in one organization also. For example, if the training institute provides a training, it should not be that because this is being provided, the participants should just go and attend the training. It should be tailor-made to suit specific training levels and standards. And generalizations drawn from one evaluation design may not identify the needs of training meant for different set of objectives. It could be an altogether a different need for others. And it is much better to use more than one method for data gathering and data information. And for feasible evaluation design, it should be cost effective, practical, and there should be utility of data. Sometimes we become very ambitious, and sometimes it is not possible to really do what we want, but we have to be aware of that we should take the practical aspects into our stride. Now we come to another point, that is purposes of evaluation. I said the first point is the evaluator should be very, very clear. Actually, the purposes of evaluation can be told by the organization what they want actually. What do they want? The purpose of evaluation that you have to do. And for this, consultation with the senior management is very, very important for any evaluator. The purposes could be measuring the learning processes, seeing the learning processes, whether the learning processes are conducive or not. It could be proving that learning has happened, proving that the training was worthwhile, proving that yes, the methods that we applied were good enough. Then another purpose could be to improve the performance, to improve the learning. Generally, when we say improving, we mean improving the performance of the employees. And the fourth purpose is monitoring. Actually, these purposes have been given us to by Easterby Smith and Mark Easterby Smith. In 1994, he produced a paper, Evaluating Management Development, Training and Education. That is actually a book by Mark Easterby Smith. And he talks about learning, proving, improving, and monitoring. But now here, what I'm showing you is a little different from what he says. He puts all these circles away from one another. Learning would be here, proving would be here, improving would be on the side, and monitoring would be another circle. But in Indian scenario, what I have seen mostly is that monitoring is encompassing all the other purposes also. Monitoring is into learning also. We monitor learning too, we monitor improving too, and we monitor the proving of for that purpose also. And it is like you can say it is a 3D kind of a thing. Monitoring is into everything. It is definitely a separate purpose too, the fourth purpose, but it is inbuilt. Like when you are measuring learning, your purpose is to measure learning, what how much learning has happened. Then too you need to monitor the activities there. Hmm? And same is with proving and improving. Now there are different people uh, involved, and these purposes are actually aligned to different set of people also. I don't say that these are watertight compartments. It's only applicable to people who work in the organization, or people who are training within a client organization. By client organization I mean here the organization whose employees are going to go for a training or who are undergoing a training. So they are more concerned with learning. It affects directly the people. This purpose of learning affects directly the people, its processes, how learning is happening. Are they showing a movie in the training? That makes it very interesting. Is it based on pedagogy or is it andragogy principles? That is, do they indulge in adult learning, or is it the learning that is like they treat you like children and they don't allow you discussions and all those things. So in the learning, when the purpose is learning, the focus is on the individual, the trainee, and focusing attention on the processes that used to create optimum conditions for people to learn and develop. Now here the evaluator's role is to see and evaluate the processes. Are the processes giving optimum conditions for the trainees, for the learners, people to learn and develop? Is it according to their standard, the current standard? Is it according to their entry behavior? Is it according to their age? Is it according to their level in the organization? Do they feel threatened by the training? Do they feel comfortable during the training? And so on. There's so many things that the evaluator has to focus attention on. And does the learning processes that has been used by the trainer or the training institute, do they provide satisfactory learning experience both on and off the job? And ability to access both its processes and outcomes. The evaluator also gauges whether accesses can be done to the process and the outcomes also. What the training has given us, that means the outcomes, the result, and how it is being provided. Was that a friendly way or not? It is not just that what has happened as a result of the training, how it was being done, how it was done. That is also important, because while we are undergoing training, we also, as human beings, we go through a number of things. It's not just the knowledge that increases, it also increases a number of things. You share your experience with other people, you are able to tell what you already know. And another important thing is, when you are undergoing a training, there's a whole chunk of knowledge or something that you need to unlearn probably. There is an unlearning that is also important. Now, for the purpose of proving, it is mostly the training institutes who are more concerned with it, whether our trainings were good enough, whether people liked our training, because they need to get more trainings in future. And the feedback of participants, the feedback of the client organization who has sent their employees to them for training is a very, very important thing for them. And the training institutions, what they do, they use a major portion of funding to provide professional services to client organizations. And it could be like thing that has to done with the facilities, the factors, the things that are required in the training. And when we want to prove the value for the activity, that yes, our training resources are being used for the satisfaction of the client. We will continue. And Mr. Arunji, are we continuing?
Yes,
Hello?
ma'am.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So we were talking about proving, and here the focus is on performance, and we need to confirm the worth, value, and impact of training. Although I said training institutes are the prime people who are concerned, but again, the organization also has to prove that they have spent the right amount on the training, and the training was worthwhile, resources are being used for the satisfaction of their client, and that is for the training institute, and confirm the worth and value and impact of training in respect of individual for job and organization. Here, when they have to prove, the purpose is proving, the evaluators concern would also be for transfer of learning, to create instruments that can help transfer of learning. Then for the purpose of improving, now client organization scenario becomes prominent. Why? Because improvement in performance was the major concern with which we started. In case of government, yes, because we do have a national training policy. And if it is a private organization, again, it is a major concern for them, because they wouldn't spend money unless they can see that there is some improvement in performance. And the client organization is also more concerned about improving, because they are the ones who send their people. The people will be away from the job, people will be going to the training institution. Of course, there will be expenditure on that, but people remaining away from work is also to be calculated in the costs that the client organization is taking, that is bearing that cost. And it enables decisions about performance improvement through training, whether people should be sent in future to trainings or not, and examining the quality and enable effective decisions for performance improvement. And here efficiency also, I showed you the graph where the resources are less used, such trainings are preferred by client organization. Efficiency becomes prominent. Effectiveness, of course, of the prime concern, but efficiency also, quality or services to customers and beneficiaries, that is what the organization aims at. Efficiency of both the training institution and as an organization as a whole, their own efficiency, their services. If it is a production unit, then they produce, gain, the increase in sales, etc. That becomes even more important for them. The purpose of evaluation is also monitoring. That is, some people call it controlling. And I think controlling is a too harsh word. We should say monitor, because here two aspects are very important. One is the process monitoring, and the other is to see whether the funds have been allocated properly or not. It offers access to an increasing variety of resources, and again, it ensures effective, efficient, and competitive use of resources. A very important tool to monitor things and monitor the funding, the allocation, is to have a training management information system. It is a data source where the people who have undergone training, which kind of training, and their career progression can be linked. And if you notice, we are coming from learning, proving, improving to monitoring. The scenario is increasing. It is monitoring, I would say, for funding agencies. It could be like the funding agency could be the same as the employer himself or a different organization. Hmm? And then they would be definitely wanting to know whether their resources have been allocated properly or not, and effective use of available resources. Could the resources be used somewhere else instead of the training and all those? So these are the four purposes that the evaluator has to keep in mind. And naturally, the purpose would change according to the place the evaluation is taking place. If it is in the training institute, their purpose would be more to see the how the learning is happening and to prove their trainings. If it is improving, the purpose of improving would be more for the employer, more for the employer. And for monitoring, it is actually should be for everybody, but more for the employer. So I talked about a tool for purpose of monitoring, that is the training management information system. And here what we try to do is to compare the costs and monitor. In one kind of training, so much was spent. Whether a new training or a new proposal has come, can we compare it and see the costs? Then common interest network are to be established, like there could be other organizations who send their people, so there should be a network. They should have a database, like what are the other organizations and common interest networks. Then resources, support services evolved to facilitate or access to resource. Then centers for excellence to be identified and encouraged to share their expertise. It has to do a lot with the benchmarking, like you have uh, organizations who have attained a certain result, and if you have the in your data their experience, their expertise, then you can share with them. You can benefit from such organizations experience. You can even have a center like center for excellence. You can also have data about the good training institutions. Then develop and share training packages, projects for continuing professional development, how the organizations can help their employees to continue their professional development. Better communication with funding agencies, that is one purpose of this too. So I think, friends, I will stop here. If you have any questions, we can discuss that. In today's session, there were no questions asked. So I think we have saved a lot of time. From next session, we will start with types of assessments and we will do the models of evaluation. So if anybody wants to raise any question, you're welcome.
Application part, the theory seems pretty obvious and easy, but if you want to see the application part, can you suggest some more reference books or some more reading material? Because this, like it is very easy to say cost should be monitored, but how do we do that? Common interest, yes, but how do we do, and what are the challenges when we actually start implementing? If you want to read up something more.
I think I agree with you. Yes, practically it is very important. And I would say most of the organizations in India are not doing it. And comparing the costs, like if you are an organization which is well established and are sending your employees a number of times to various trainings, and then you can keep a data of the costs and how the resources were like allocated, and then what was the performance indicators you had, and what are the results that you have obtained. If you have done that exercise, only then you can monitor and compare the costs. This is a TMIS tool, is a tool that is used a lot in the West, and it is a very powerful concept. If the organizations implement it, it is very, very useful. And then common interest networks are really difficult to do, and it is not one individual that would do. It is to be maintained as data in the organization, a lot of queries to be made on that, and depending upon your requirement, you need to have that, and you have to have a relationship with those people, a rapport with them, and then only you can have a network. So it depends upon the interests you have. Am I making sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other question? Yeah.
Yes, Rizwan here, ma'am.
Yeah. Tell me, Rizwan.
Can we go back to the slide where you have shown the graph about performance against resource?
Yeah, definitely.
You have shown.
Yeah, just a minute. I'll just go in.
The same one, the one which you earlier.
This one?
More. No, the other one. Performance against resources.
Oh, you mean the blank slide kind of thing? This one?
No. Going back.
Where the parameters are being talked about.
You had
where I'm
added
talking
that,
about the parameters.
Yeah, 3 parameters. No, going
okay,
back.
I think that is much ahead. Yeah. Here, this one.
No, ma'am. You had that graph.
You were talking about a graph. On the x-axis, we are showing resources. On the y-axis, we are showing the performance.
You showed that resources were increasing and the performance was in. Now, in this one, you have mentioned the learning curve tends to become horizontal or tapers out, right?
Right, flat.
Yeah, but if you look at performance, if the resources are increasing, the performance will also increase exponentially, isn't it? Why will the performance remain very small? If you're showing here is
actually what it wants to say, I think, Rizwan, is that your question is why resources are increasing more, or is it that why the performance is not increasing?
Yes, my question is, with time the graph should be going higher, with the performance should be increasing vertically upwards if the resources are going to be increasing. Why is it tapering and going sideways? My question.
Okay, like it is actually in connection with the training courses. Okay, because we're talking about evaluation of training. So when a person, let us talk about an individual, when a person enters into a course, there's an acceleration in learning. Okay.
Yeah.
And his performance is increasing because there's a sharp increase in the performance. You see, this increases much more.
Yes.
And when he is into the job after some time, here you can think the resource as the time, or maybe the salary rise in the salary that is happening when you are reaching higher levels in the hierarchy, or maybe you are you're getting more increments and your salary is increasing. Resources could be thinking time in terms of that. So the resources are increasing. This is a fact, and this is a learning curve has been based upon research. Okay, and this happens that he learned something, he applied it, but there must be other developments too that are happening. Of course, he is learning, his performance is increasing. Sometimes, you know, it becomes our second nature. There is something called a model of learning,
complacency,
where we learn when we don't know much, we learn much more. When we are already knowing something, then we come to when we start learning something new, then we realize how much we don't know, and we become motivated and learn much more. But then after some time, when we know the things, it becomes a second nature to us. We keep on doing the same jobs with the learning that we already had. It is past the time that he did his training, and now he is repeating the same things. And this is based upon research, Rizwan, that the learning curve of an individual tends to flatten unless something is done about it. If he is continuing his improvement, he is learning more
So
of
there
new
needs to
things.
be
That is true for almost every skill, every for example, even if you're learning a game, then too it becomes like that, like it becomes second nature to you. Unless you practice new skills, you bring in something new, you tend to become stagnant. Your performance does, you give the same result. That is
may,
what it tries to show.
may I say something, ma'am, here?
Yeah, please.
What we have learned in other systems like the Sigma or other excellence achieving models is that if you continuously do the same thing and practice the same thing, your performance definitely needs to increase because your skill level is going high, your error level is going down, and on a higher level, you are going from 60% to 90, 95, 99, and so on and so forth. Your error level should reduce
I
and your
haven't
performance.
studied Six Sigma to such an extent. Like I know a little about it, but like this is a kind of thing that if you keep on doing the same thing, like practices, it becomes second nature to you. You don't even have to think about it. For example, driving. You don't even
Yes.
have to think about it, but that is the stage which is much more dangerous. You may start jumping the red lights. You may start using your cell phone and turning and doing all kinds of things, not realizing that it's become second nature to you. You don't have to think about it. It becomes like, for example, a professor, he goes into the class and he just delivers the lecture because it has become second nature to him. But if he's not keeping abreast of the latest developments that are happening, then there is a uh, definitely a danger that his performance would be flat. So we'll check it,
Ma'am, is there
and you
some
also
write up?
check it on
Is
your,
there
this is
is
what
there a write up on this? Something, some material we can read through on this
yeah,
particular?
I think I can share some material with you.
Yes,
That
on
would
this
be, but I
particular
will have to
specifically.
just look for it, and
Yes.
not today, but
Yeah.
in the next classes, or maybe if these ISCD people will provide you, we can definitely
Thank you,
have
ma'am.
it.
Thank you.
I think we are on the same level, but a little mismatch,
Okay. Thank you.
probably. I think you're saying the same thing, that you're practicing the same thing. Yes, it will become the second nature. But for example, if you're a doctor or you're a surgeon, if you're not keeping abreast of latest research, latest things, new instruments that have come up, then you are going to decline. This happens in India, in government hospitals a lot. Like if people are not abreast of the latest developments in technology, then they are probably, they will have a flat curve like this. So for that not to happen, the organizations have to supply them with the latest. That is what it tends to
Okay.
say.
Okay. Thank you.
Am I making sense, Rizwan?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? I hope the sessions were useful today. So I think we can stop here.